USCHO.com. This is the USCHO Spotlight, a weekly podcast from U.S. College Hockey Online at USCHO.com, featuring conversations with college hockey coaches and players and journalists who cover the sport.
Welcome to USCHO Spotlight for Thursday, January 13th, 2022. I'm Ed Trefzger alongside Jim Connelly. This podcast is brought to you by DCU, Digital Federal Credit Union. What will DCU mean to you? Find out today by visiting dcu.org. Membership required. Jim, 5 years ago, a lot of people didn't know who AIC was. Now the whole college hockey world knows about the Yellow Jackets.
And joining us now on USCHO Spotlight, his team is on a 6-game winning streak. 5 in conference and a good non-conference win the other night against UConn. That's American International and head coach Eric Lang. Eric, good hockey of late. I'm sure the results are something that makes any coach pleased.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Thanks for having me on, guys. I know we weren't quite as bad as maybe as our record kind of indicated here first semester. We played as tough a non-league slate, and even our in-conference stuff was against some of the better teams in theory in our league. And, we've had 4 3-on-3 losses, which can kind of mask a little bit. It didn't feel as good, but we knew deep down that we're a really good hockey team. And I think we're starting to see that come to fruition here.
But you just mentioned it, that, your non-conference schedule was a gauntlet. You started with an exhibition against Boston College, but then you opened your season with number 11 Providence, number 9 UMass for 2 games. You then played number 5 Quinnipiac for 2 games. You go back and play Providence again. You set up a very difficult slate out of conference. Was there some intent to that, Eric, knowing that, even if you lose those games, you're making your team better for the end of the season run?
No doubt about that. And there's no moral victories here for AIC any longer. Like, we play those games with the expectation that we're going to win some of them. It certainly will set us up for success later on in the season. And I think it was 2 years ago when we were in the NCAA tournament. Every one of our non-league games, they all ended up being NCAA tournament teams. I almost forecast that a little bit with the teams we've played this year, that they're at least going to be close to being an NCAA tournament team. And you know what? If you don't play them, you can't beat them, and that's kind of been our mantra here.
You mentioned you had some 3-on-3 losses, a lot of low scoring, close games where you came out on the wrong side, but of late pucks have popped in the net. Do you feel like things have is there just a different mentality sometimes? And, the puck jumps in the net. Do you feel like there's better attention to detail? What's gone well for these last 6 games where you've been averaging, more than 3 goals a game?
Nothing succeeds like success. I think our guys are starting to feel really good about themselves. We've had pretty good emphasis here on third period play. Our third periods have been way better. And, the strength of our team really is the team. And we were getting contributions from our fourth line. And, if someone were to ask me how to explain what we are here at AIC Hockey, like for AIC, like we don't necessarily have a first line, but we don't have a fourth line either. And we get contributions all across the board. And I think that's what you're seeing a little bit of is we can score up and down our lineup. We've got 7 or 8 really good mobile defensemen that are getting involved in our offense. And I'm really happy with how we are progressing as a team here.
I look, Eric, at the stats for your team right now, and the top 5 scoring leaders are all either juniors, seniors, or graduate students. The experience level you have on your team, that pays off over time.
No doubt about it. And you know what? Our senior class here is trying to do something almost unprecedented, which is 4 straight league championships. And, I know for sure it's never been done in Atlantic hockey before. I would think across the board, it's something that's pretty uncommon. Usually when you're a good, strong program, you graduate really good players. We got Parker Revering here and Elijah Barriga and Chris Dodero, Luka Maver, that winning 4th league championship is really important to this group. And, we return a lot from last year. And the expectation is at the end of the day, we're going to be one of the last teams standing here in Atlantic hockey.
Eric, it probably goes without saying that each year gets harder to repeat as a champion. Right now, you're in first place in the league, but 6 points separating your team and a tie for fifth place, which means there are 5 other teams that are really one weekend away from first place. How do you evaluate the league right now, even after you've recently played the last place team, Holy Cross?
It's a little bit of a parallel to how I feel about our hockey team. I don't, make no mistake about it. The top of Atlantic hockey, we certainly are not the top of Hockey East. And I will also say, though, we don't have a bottom. And we went from 9th to 1st in 2 weekends. And that's a little bit of what you have in our league. Like, I don't know who's going to come in last place in our league, but I know it's a pretty darn good team, whoever that might be. And I think there's clear bottoms. I think there's a clear bottom in the ECAC. I think there's a clear bottom in the Hockey East. I don't know if you can say that about our league. And conversely, I don't know if I'm not ready to put AIC, with the top of Hockey East or the ECAC or some of these other conferences, but the league is really strong. It's progressed like as good as it's been. We've got some key signature wins inside of our conference, and our track record in the NCAA tournament is as good as any. We've got a lot of first round column upsets or what have you, but we've had success in the NCAA tournament.
We've talked when you've been a guest before about recruiting, but before we talk a little bit about that, just to kind of let people know how you've had some success, you're one of the teams that people have highlighted to me that have done an excellent job in the off season with transfers. You got 2 transfer goalies that are playing well for you and some other key players. How did you approach the transfer portal in this past off season, and how will you approach it going forward?
I think it's a great opportunity to have an evaluation on some players that I'll take Brian Regali, for example. He was a really good player at UConn and wasn't quite in their mind, maybe not as quite as strong as some of their higher end forwards and necessarily doesn't get power play time over there or doesn't get key minutes. And he's getting that opportunity here. Jake Kucharski over at Providence was a really good goaltender, and he gets stuck behind some really good goalies over there. So the transfer portal for us has been really good. And I think you get a kid who's on a little bit of a second chance and with a little something to prove. And, we've passed on some good players. It's got to be a perfect fit for us here. And that's something that we've taken a lot of pride in. And hey, make no mistake about it. At AIC, we have to turn over more rocks than most. We've got one of our transfers played club hockey at UNLV. Obviously, our influx of European players is higher than any other team in the country. So, we have to go where Boston College and Boston University and UMass, where they're not going. And that's okay for us. We've kind of found a little Moneyball type way to go about things here. And although we're not trying to get in the recruiting battles with those guys, we have expectation that we're going to beat those guys.
More with AIC head coach Eric Lang in a moment. This podcast is brought to you by DCU, Digital Federal Credit Union. Visit dcu.org.
This is the USCHO Spotlight, a weekly podcast from US College Hockey Online.
Know how people say life happens? Well, for me, life was happening, and I needed a new truck. I didn't have time to shop around for a good loan, so I got one from the dealer, higher interest and all. Month after month, those payments were squeezing me. So I went to DCU. They refinanced my loan and helped lower my rate, which lowered my payments. These days, I have more money in my pocket for whatever life throws at me. What will DCU mean to you? Insured by NCUA. Membership required. Visit dcu.org.
Now more with AIC head coach Eric Lang. A few weeks back, Atlantic Hockey announced that it was going to move its championship weekend to Utica, New York, Adirondack Bank Center, the venerable Utica Memorial Auditorium as it was formerly known. Utica, kind of like Springfield, a good little hockey town, an AHL team, and a facility that is located sort of centrally geographically for all the teams in the league. How do you feel about the league setting up sort of a showcase in Utica?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a fantastic venue. Utica, tremendous hockey town, as you alluded to. You look at their Division III hockey team, and they're getting 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people a night to go watch college hockey over there. I think it's a great opportunity for our league. And, as you mentioned, I think the location, it just about suits everybody. So there's certainly lots of positives there.
Power released a video that featured one of your freshmen, Reggie Millette. It was a really, really great video, and we'll put a link to it in our show notes. Could you tell us a little bit about Reggie?
Yeah, Reggie is, first off, he's just a special person, amazing human being, checks a lot of boxes that we look for in terms of the criteria to be an AIC hockey player. And one thing we've gravitated towards is players that have gone through some adversity. And Reggie's story is amazing, no doubt about it. We've got 3 or 4 other stories that are very similar to that in our locker room right now. And you know what? Going through a stretch of not playing well is 1/100th of the adversity that a Reggie Millette or a Blake Bennett's been through in their life. And, Reggie's, his story is incredible, but when you get to know Reggie, it makes a whole lot of sense. And he's getting what he deserves right now as well. Like he's been in our lineup and he's provide great energy, and his demeanor on the bench is as good as any player I've ever coached. And so much good is kind of coming out of this. And, and I think Reggie handled it beautifully.
How key is character to your recruiting and to the success of your program?
It's everything. And this goes back to the days of Gary Wright. We measure twice and we cut once here. And it's a 4-year marriage. And in some instances with the COVID year, it's been a 5-year marriage. And we want to coach players we want to be around. We want to coach players that have integrity and have high standards. And, we allude a lot to the A mindset, and we will take a B talent, and Reggie Millette is a B talent, but he's got an A mindset. And when you add up enough of those players over the course of 4 years, the development process is special because they practice hard. They push each other. They're unbelievably coachable. And, one thing we're proud of is guys get better here. They come in as a B talent and maybe they're leaving as a B plus or an A minus talent. We've got a lot of guys having success in pro hockey, and it's a credit to who they are as people. And that is first and foremost. And we've made a living on passing on A talent and B character. It's just a no thank you here. And we'll move on to the next guy. And when you watch us play, our team game is as good as anybody. And, we don't roll out, any NHL picks. And it's been really, really good for us here. And it makes our experience as coaches super enjoyable. And most importantly, it makes the players' experience enjoyable. And something we're really proud of, little old AIC in the inner city here in Springfield. Nobody wants to leave this place, and nobody shows up on the transfer portal. And we carry as many players as anybody in the country. And we have a lot of guys in the stands, and yet nobody's dying to get on that transfer portal. And we're as proud as that as anything.
Eric, you just touched on 2 things that I was going to bring up here. The first, Springfield, and what Springfield has become as kind of a hockey city. You look at AIC having success, and then not too far up the road in Amherst, the current national champion in UMass. There's something special, it seems, when you go out to that area, that they really do like their hockey. And I grew up my whole life in Boston, so maybe I was kind of sheltered from it. But it's a little area that really does like hockey.
It's an unbelievable, passionate fan base. Eddie Shore and the long history of the Springfield Indians right up until, the Thunderbirds. And, you alluded to UMass having success. And, we've had as much success as any college hockey program in the country the last 3 years, and our fan base is really growing over here. And it's pretty neat to see. It's there is a strong little hockey history in this little corridor of Massachusetts for sure.
You also mentioned a guy by the name of Gary Wright, and longtime coach, 32 years behind the bench at AIC. You played for him, you coached alongside him. Just announced this week by the American Hockey Coaches Association that he's going to receive the John Snooks Kelly's Founders Award, which is, for coaches that contribute to the overall growth and development of the sport of ice hockey in the United States. And I don't know if you could find a better person that really grew and helped develop hockey at AIC better than Gary. You played and coached with him. What do you remember about Gary?
I said this earlier, and I took a call on this. If the NCAA coaching body conducted themselves like Gary Wright, you would. There's no need for a rule book. He never operated in the gray. A man of the highest integrity, did things the right way every single time. He's amazing to the school. Treat the school janitor the same way you treat the school president. And 32 years at one institution has impacted a lot of lives. And you can't get a couple of AIC guys together at any given moment and Gary's name doesn't come up. And you look at his coaching tree, it's pretty strong. And, I'm not here answering these questions if Gary Wright isn't, doesn't take a chance on a below average hockey player from the Bronx and then hires a non-experienced assistant coach in 2006. So the guy has meant absolutely everything to me. And, he's one of the most amazing people you could ever be around.
Eric, before I let you go, I'll ask about this weekend. You get a 2-game slate against Mercyhurst. And this is for your team. This is probably the series that tests, a little bit of your conditioning, because this will be 5 games in 8 days for your team. First off, Mercyhurst, what you see when you look at them on film, and then just the fact that this has been a kind of a grinding stretch, albeit with a lot of W's before you, but how do you get those W's to continue into this weekend?
Yeah, first on Mercyhurst, they've got some signature wins this year. They are unbelievably skilled, super dangerous. The game has to go a certain way for us to have success. We're not going to try and get into a track meet with those guys. Our details, habits, and concepts are going to have to supersede their high-end skill that they have over there. In terms of 5 and 8 days, the one thing that we do well here is we have great team depth. We'll get some guys in and out, and I don't foresee the 5 and 8 being a big factor. We'll have to play hard and play detailed and be stingy and make sure that the brand of game is an AIC hockey game and not an up and down the ice Mercyhurst game.
Well, Eric, it's a nice little run. You're on here, 6 straight wins, going for 7 and 8 this weekend against Mercyhurst. We're following your team. We're enjoying what we're seeing from afar, and certainly thanks for taking the time to join us today. Keep up the good work, and hopefully we can chat again later on in the season.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks for everything you guys do for college hockey. Thanks for having me on.
That's AIC's head coach, Eric Lang. Jim, it was great to talk a little bit about Gary Wright. A lot of people know that more recently, Eric Lang was an assistant with Brian Riley at Army, and certainly there are a lot of things learned there, but people may not understand what an impact Gary Wright had on the college game, and certainly we heard about the impact he had on Eric.
Yeah, there's a few coaches out there, and you'll actually see, another one of them out in Springfield this week, Rick Gotkin, who elevated their program, began at Division III, moved it up to Division II, then got to Division I. And Gary Wright did that with American International and AIC, and that's been well documented. But I liked the way that Eric described him, and talking about the fact that you wouldn't need a rule book. He was a gentleman, and he is a gentleman. Still a fantastic guy. 32 seasons behind the bench, almost 1,000 games coached at AIC. I know that I was not following the team or covering the team when he was doing this, because I've only really known him in his Division I era. But I know that scribes from the old days would say that he approached the game that he wanted to see players play. And every period he would change his goaltender just so that every goaltender got some playing time. And, you can do that probably in the Division III world and get away with it, maybe even D2, but D1, you got to kind of settle. And he did. And he adapted as a coach, and he did a great job with that program and building a foundation, and obviously had such a great influence on the life of their current coach, Eric Lang, both as a player and as a graduate assistant back in the mid to early 2000s. I think that it's hard to think about some legacies, but when I look at what the Snooks Kelly Award is that he'll receive this April. I mean, in terms of building and growing the game in the United States, that was all of what Gary Wright was about.
And you talk about elevating from Division III. It was really almost Division 3.5 or Division 4 in that old ECAC North, Central, and South. That was really kind of a step below sort of the ECAC and NESCAC back in those days. So that was really like a 4-step elevation. But I also want to mention something that Eric said about recruiting players and about character. That quote from him about he would rather have a B talent and A character than A talent and B character, and how that sort of character and being a good teammate is really something to build a successful team around.
That's the building block that I think you need in hockey. Any sports, but for some reason, hockey might be the length of the season, but the college season, the longest season of any sport, really. But these guys are together a lot. And if you don't have the best character in your locker room, you threaten to lose a locker room. You get those cancers sometimes inside of a locker room that come because of, the character or the personality just not fitting. So I think when you talk about what Eric Lang said and the fact that he will, build a player, because you can build skill, but you can't build character, is kind of the way I read what he was trying to say. And he's had kids become better players, but as long as you're a good kid and a good player, and have that character, you're going to have a good locker room. I think that's what AIC has had now for the last 3+ years.
Well, we'll watch them with interest. They're in first place now in a tight battle for what they hope will be their 4th league championship. This podcast has been brought to you by DCU Digital Federal Credit Union. What will DCU mean to you? Find out today by visiting dcu.org. Membership required. For Jim Connelly, I'm Ed Trefzger. We'll catch you next time.
This has been the USCHO Spotlight, a production of U.S. College Hockey Online. Visit uscho.com/podcasts to listen or subscribe.